Thank you, Senator Allen, and thank you, members of the committee. It might seem a little strange to choose a costume designer as the person to come and testify before the committee, but I think I'm right that we haven't met ever, right? And I don't know anybody in this room. These are all strangers, and yet you really know, and all of you really know too, Indiana Jones, which, right? You can conjure him up. Michael Jackson's Thriller. Everybody know the jacket? Right. But really, only my parents knew that it was Deborah Nadoolman who created those costumes. If I hadn't told you, you couldn't name the designer of Indiana Jones. And yet we made those clothes in California. And so my presentation today is really about costume design, what you don't know about costume design, and how exponentially powerful those characters are, and popular culture, and the power of storytelling. Is it this? So I'm gonna try to be short. I teach 3-hour classes at UCLA, so I'm really going to watch my clock. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about costume design. Costume design really has less to do with clothes than it does with story. So it starts with the script. And where does the story take place? Is he dressed correctly? No. Is she dressed correctly? No. He is very dead. Right? Right? She is not dressed correctly. So the most important thing about costume is that it serves the story, and it has to be appropriate for the story at whenever we find that character. The primary function of costume design is storytelling, and it telegraphs social status, economic status, time period, occupation, weather, and genre. So what is a costume? Well, everybody gets dressed up for Halloween and assumes that this is what costume is. And when you think of costume design, and you can look at all these pictures, this is what you think of costume design as. However, I'm here to tell you that this is also costume design, and so is this. Costume design, sometimes the best costume design, completely disappears into the narrative. Now, costume designers are just essential to the creation of these iconic characters. Here's Michael Kaplan, just picked a few. So from Flashdance to Star Trek to Blade Runner to Fight Club to Star Wars, Michael Kaplan is a Californian who makes these costumes here in California. The impact is exponential and worldwide. People may not speak our language, but we all share a common popular culture. Sharon Davis is working constantly, and you can name all of these films. Ellen Mirojnick has, and now costume designers are working in both film and television about the same amount. It used to be a hierarchy. Well, television is having its golden age. And then I can speak about my work. I mean, I think you know the Blues Brothers. I think I was Oscar nominated for Coming to America. There is the Three Amigos, Indiana Jones, Animal House, and Michael Jackson's Thriller. I think you really know my work. So I'm going to leave myself on the screen for just a half a second and just say that costume designers punch well above our weight if you consider the national and global impact of our work. There are 1,000 costume designers in Local 892. That's IA Local 892. But the impact of our individual creative contributions is absolutely profound. The Costume Designers Guild also has an abundance of international creative talent who migrate to California because California is the nexus and the hub of emerging platforms. Talented people worldwide have to be here. They must come here. Then think about one character in this group, just one, Indiana Jones. It's easy to understand the enduring effect that this one costume has on the state of California. You know that everybody know what he looks like, but before I came in the room, you had no idea who designed it. So in 2012, I curated a blockbuster exhibition, sort of the Hamilton of exhibitions, at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, right? This exhibition had 268,000 people visit it in 14 weeks. The exhibition toured worldwide, and then came to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, closed last year. It was open for 6 months. And I actually have some stats about it. At the Academy, Hollywood Costume itself brought in $6 million into the local economy. Over 80,000 people attended, 50% from outside the Southern California area. And it really gave an expanded view of costume design and filmmaking and inspired others to learn more about both, and really will serve very much as a template for the new museum. I hope this, yes, wow. Let's see if this works. I had so much pride to open this exhibition in London. It was pride for my field, but it was also pride that all of these clothes were made in California and designed by California designers and made by California workers and artisans. But its impact was so important. People stood and cried in front of the costumes. These clothes are so much more than costumes. They really represent the stories that we all have such an attachment to. And it's made here in our state. So I was worried that the show wouldn't be able to come back home. I just wanted to be able to take the whole state and bring it to London, where it was so absolutely adored, and our work was so revered. I know there's more. So the show looked like this. In front of every costume, there was the screenplay and then a full-size image of the actor in the costume projected. Those of you who haven't seen it, I know, are just kicking themselves right now. Charlie Chaplin's clothes that were donated to us by his grandchildren. We even had the Big Lebowski. So why would I have the Big Lebowski? Again, you never consider it a costume. It was a costume. Jeff Bridges actually doesn't dress this way. And this was a whole group of what's considered contemporary costume, and yet it's all costume design. It's all created with character in mind from a screenplay. And I used, this was projection. And I used projection and animation and new techniques for museum display. So this is the designers, that's Steven Soderbergh calling him. So this is Jeffrey Kurland's screenplay with his notes on it, because a costume designer has to read the screenplay. It has to be, everything comes from literature. We have to be culturally literate in order to be costume designers, right? I completely deconstructed Indiana Jones, and I can because I'm the mother, right? So, and then I put it on film. You'll only have a minute of this. So starting with the screenplay, reading the screenplay, speaking to the director, then speaking to the production designer, the cinematographer, because film is truly a collaborative art, right? And then I go on and I deconstruct the meaning of each part of his clothing. So at Hollywood Costume, broke new ground in terms of the exhibitions. I had rear screen projected faces of the actor or actress in the costume that they were wearing in that scene. So the clothes really came alive. It wasn't a static exhibition. And everyone in this room should be able to name all of those fellas. So I'd just like to say that our work crosses digital media, fashion, theme parks, tourism, toys, and publishing. Its reach is exponential. We are creating popular culture that is shared globally, and our designs are seen nearly everywhere on the planet. Costume is really complicated. We start from the script and end with the wrap. We work with the greatest cinematographers, production designers. We're all on a line, and it's usually the woman in between. There's Todd Haynes, director, David Fincher, director. I could have put my husband in there too. The costume department shrinks or expands with the needs of the screenplay, but they can get really, really, really deep. Costume design is separated into two parts. The designers, which is the local 892, I've been a member for 40 years, and motion picture costumers, the hands, which include costume supervisors, key costumers, workroom rentals, tailor seamstresses, and I've been a member of Motion Picture Costumers Local 705 for 41 years. My colleague at UCLA, Chrissy Carvanides, she was the designer of Big Love and Carnival and American Horror Story, is working right now on a show called Blunt Talk. Her total costume crew is 10 people. Each union employee makes a minimum of $28 an hour before overtime, and the costume crew works a minimum of 12 to 16-hour days. 90% of the design teams have a BA in costume design, and about 50% have an MFA in costume design. Most department production assistants have a degree in costume design, and a PA job is considered by many to be an informal training and apprenticeship. And I'm closing with just talking about one of our graduates at UCLA. Now, I graduated with an MFA at UCLA in 1975, and I am now an endowed chair at UCLA. Rebecca Guzzi graduated in 2013. She interned while at UCLA. Then after graduation, she worked for my colleague at Fox for a year. Then she became an assistant designer on a project in North Carolina. Then she returned to LA, and she was hired on a film which flipped to union and became a member of 705. Then she assisted Chrissy again on Blunt Talk, and 2 days after finishing Blunt Talk, she is now the key assistant costume designer for American Horror Story. We consider that a success. At UCLA, we have 100% placement of our MFA designers. She's a member of both unions, which means twice the possibilities of employment. That's what we try to do. And finally, last week, the designer of Game of Thrones, there she is, the blonde in the middle, was our Swarovski designer in residence and came to teach master classes at UCLA. And so our students at UCLA absolutely have the best of the best coming in to teach master classes, because if a costume designer is really lucky, they win an award for their day job. And we know that we are teaching the Emmy, Oscar, and Tony winners of the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it. There's just a clarification so I can understand. The two unions, what's the difference between the two?
Yes, well, we're all IATSE,
Right.
but motion picture costumers represents everyone who works in the workroom. So the on-set dressers, you want to dress an actor, you're 705. Are you a costume supervisor figuring out budgeting at the studio or working at a costume rental house like Western Costume? You're local 705. Are you a tailor or a tailor's assistant? You're local 705. Are you a seamstress? Are you an armorer? Are you a beater? These are all 705. A cobbler, a milliner, these are all artisans, spectacular artisans who work through local 705. In the Costume Designers Guild, and I was two-term president, we're the costume designer, the assistant costume designer, and the costume illustrator. Mm-hmm.